Good morning and welcome to Demolition Live. Just in case you've forgotten, I'm your host, Mark Anthony. I realise it's been a little while since I last went live, and for that I offer my most humble apologies. But if you were around last Tuesday night for our massive Hillhead Almost Live event, I think you'll appreciate we've been just a little bit distracted here. If you did miss the show, I will add a card to this video later so you can watch it for yourself. Now, today's guest is Neil Edwards, CEO of trade association and market intelligence provider, the Builders Conference. And he joins us at a very interesting time for the UK construction and demolition sector. For the second month, new contract awards recorded on the BCLive league table have failed to reach the £4 billion mark that has been the established norm for the past few years. And yet at the same time, Prime Minister and push-up expert Boris Johnson has just pledged £5 billion infrastructure investment to kickstart the construction sector so that once again we can lead the nation out of recession. So to talk about all of that and probably a whole lot more besides, let's get Neil onto the stream right now. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. We will come to the BCLive league table and Mr. Johnson's pledge in a second, but let's start with a positive. It's been a good month for you guys with your tie-up with the good folk at the Scaffolding Association.
Yeah, it's tremendous news, really, and very forward-thinking, really. We've been discussing with them over the last couple of months or so, 3 or 4 months, how added value can be put to their members, because obviously trade associations are always trying to provide that for their membership, the added value. And one thing was being cried out for was sales leads or information and understanding of what's going on in the construction industry. So behind the scenes, we've been discussing with them that how we can, every one of their audited and assessed members can actually obtain our information as part of their own membership to the Scaffolding Association. And I'm really pleased to announce, as from the 1st of June this year, every member of the Scaffolding Association that has an audited and assessed membership of the association gets our information as part of the deal. So it's great news.
It's fantastic news. I mean, given the need for that information, I mean, I would imagine that at this time, given where the market is and where the sector is at the moment, you'd think that people would be crying out for that sort of information. You'd think that other trade associations would be beating a path to your door right about now, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly right. We all know that trade bodies are sometimes looked upon as sometimes not always a necessity, can be classed as an added value to their business, but not always a necessity. So they've always got to keep evolving, and one of those evolving things should be, I think, obviously understanding the sales, what's going on in the marketplace, and we can offer that. And joining up with them, yeah. So hopefully, in the near future, a lot more will be knocking at our door to say, okay, can we do the deal? We're open to that. We're a trade body. We don't, as well like them, we don't have favour to anybody. We're just trying to improve the construction industry, and that's what we're trying to do, is make it easier. So we know the jobs are out there, but if you can actually funnel that into a position like on our website or our platform, all the information is there, and you don't have to go around for half an hour or 3/4 of an hour or 2 days or whatever it is to try and find the info.
Absolutely. So that's the good news pushed to one side for a second. Let's look at the stark facts from June 2020. I must admit, I've already taken a sneak peek at the BCLive league table myself, and it doesn't make for a very pleasant reading, does it?
No. Yeah, reality has come to the door. We did know, we were all speaking about it, how the first couple of months of March and April seemed to buck the system. You know, there were still quite a number of projects, but they were infrastructure projects as well. But they were going through. But this month, well, last month and this month have been a stark reality. And in point of fact, obviously it's worse than last month. So we are seeing this decline quite dramatically in the number of or the amount of work that's actually out there at the present moment in time. We think it's just going to hit the £3.5 billion mark this month.
Yeah, one of the things that we will get onto the facts and figures in a second, but one of the things that struck me about the table this morning when I looked at it first thing is the fact that there's a bunch of companies on there that you wouldn't normally expect to see that high up the table, like Ballymore Properties and Acorn Property Group and John Paul Construction. Great news for them, but is that an indicator that it's the industry's big names that have really taken, the first punch from the downward turn?
I think you're right. I think you can also see down there. Okay, we have a weather vane of a company called Kia Group, and I said last month that they were just. But normally we recognise the fact that they last year in 2019 they roughly got approximately just over a working day. So that's about 21, 22 a month. And last month it was a little bit less, and this month it's just on the number. So that's your weather vane. So I think some of the bigger boys bigger businesses are not getting the work coming through. So they have taken the first punch. Probably why that is, if I was to make an opinion on this, is the fact that companies or clients that are going to spend some work or spend some money will spend a little bit of money. But they won't spend a whole lot of money. They haven't got the confidence to go out there at this present moment in time and spend many, many millions of pounds on a new factory, a new office block or whatever. Whereas to do up or to refurbish a £5 million project, a £3 million project, £2 million project, probably they think, I've got to do this. It's what I need to do. I'll just spend that little bit of money and wait to see what's happening. And I think that's what we're caught in at the moment, caught in that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's indicated by some of the figures. I mean, we've grown fairly accustomed to, the top, literally the number one on the BCLive league table is often with $500 million, $750 million, sometimes more than $1 billion, and it's 250 million. And 250 million. I wouldn't mind it in my bank account, to be honest. But it's in the grand scheme of things, that's not a particularly big project, is it?
No, not at all. Not in the scheme of things. What you're seeing is we have got, we say that normally we like to see the top 10 over 100 million, and we have got that this month. But you are looking, normally you get at least $500 million at the top and going up to $1.5 billion, and those marquee projects just aren't about at the present moment in time, I think. But there is some good news. Hopefully, what the government is saying, that they're going to put a lot of money into infrastructure and building. We keep our fingers crossed that they actually get that going and actually get that started, and hopefully the construction industry can lead us out of this, what is undoubtedly going to be a very serious economic situation.
Well, let's come back to Boris Johnson in a second. Let's actually get some facts and figures on the table. So, okay. As I say, I've already taken a look, and I know Vinci are numero uno, but yes, how are they numero uno?
Yeah. Well, Vinci are numero uno, as you say. They've secured a rather large project up in Manchester. It's a £250 million mixed-use development and housing. It's for Muse Developments as an organisation, and yes, it's Corporation Street up in Manchester. So it's that is the number one spot, and they've only picked up that singular project this month. So yeah, that's a great way to start, and a great way to have that in the month. Number two on the table for what we found out by our research is John Sisk, and they've picked up the new headquarters for Santander in Milton Keynes. That's worth about 170 million. And that's a huge, great project for them. And so that's a great start also to the month. Number three on the list, as you've spoken about already, is a company called Ballymore Properties. Now, they're doing it as a project management type, and it's a project in Hounslow. Now, this could be part of a bigger scheme as well. So this is the first part to it. Now, I wonder if this is going to be also, we'll try a little bit of this scheme. We can't section it all off. We'll section some of it off. We'll go with this and see how it goes, because this is mixed use of offices and retail and also some housing as well. So possibly that could be subject to what the actual way of the world is in the future. Number 4 on the list is Galliford Try, and they've picked up something like just over £140 million worth of work. And the largest one of their projects is a housing project in Tottenham Hale. The client is Argent, and yeah, it's I can't see the number of units what it's for down here, but at the moment, but yeah, it's in Tottenham Hale. Number 5 on the list is Ardmore, another project in London. This one's in Hammersmith. This is a multi type project itself. It's got 4-screen cinema, shops, offices, restaurants, entertainment, housing, etc. And that's worth about £120 million. Number 6 on the list is Ardmore. Once again, housing. We always talk about it, but yeah, housing again is the significant way forward at the present moment in time. And this project is in Acton, West London, and that's the client there is Catalyst Housing Group. So it's obviously going to be part social housing, part shared ownership, but it's a great job, £120 million there. And Kiers, as I spoke about earlier on, they've picked up so far this month 21 projects, and the largest one of their projects is a £30 million mental health unit in Stevenage. It's a new 54-bed adult acute mental health unit, and that's for Hertfordshire Partnership University NHS Trust. So, you know, that's good. We got, well, it's at the present moment in time, I'm just looking at it, literally the live table, we got 11 over £100 million, but we haven't got that marquee project sitting at the top other than the £250 million one that Vinci have got.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that struck me about the figures that you just alluded to there is the fact that Manchester got the lead project and Milton Keynes got the second. How does that affect the wider scheme of things on regions?
Yeah, well, once again, normally we look towards London to be that £1 billion mark, and as we speak now, it's just 900 million, so it's just below that area. But when you look at Milton Keynes, we class that as obviously Buckinghamshire, so it's outside of that area. But so that is pretty significant that London hasn't also hit the £1 billion mark. But Manchester, the northwest region is something like over £500 million, 648 million so far. And the other one that's quite a lot this month is the southwest region. That's over £500 million. They've got 3 significant projects there, one in Plymouth, one in Frome, and one in Devizes. So, and they're all over 80 million, those projects. So that's lifted that area as well. So, and Scotland has finally started to see some activity, because that has had it seems across the UK a more stringent lockdown. Their devolved government has only just started to release the process, and they've just got 100 million, which is still way down on what we should expect up in Scotland, but at least it's starting to recover up there.
So how are we looking on the sectors? I mean, I know that the word housing came up a couple of times in your talk through there. Is that still number one there?
Yes, 1.5 billion this month, and also you've also got the miscellaneous section, as I always say, that we never do split down miscellaneous, whether it's offices, retail, and then also housing as well. So there's about £500 million in that sector as well. Another sector that's doing well, because I've already said about the Manchester project and also the Milton Keynes project, offices this month is £500 million, and another good sector, but normally, is education, and I know we'll come on to talk about that in a minute, but that's about 300 million, which is down on the usual. We would normally start to see in April, May time, a lot of contract awards for summer work in schools, etc. We haven't seen that rush. There has been an element of that to do some refurbishment in schools, etc. But with the uncertainty of when schools are going back, etc., it seems that has been a bit delayed. So we haven't seen those smaller projects. And what I mean by smaller projects, 5 million and below. come out for the education sector. But yeah, they're the 4 or 5 main sectors. The others, infrastructure has got very little this month because it had quite a lot, obviously, in March and April, and hopefully that is where we're going to, as a UK economy, take ourselves out, is by building as in the infrastructure sector.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a perfect lead into our friend Mr. Johnson, and between public press ups, he was talking about 5 billion in infrastructure. I always treat these things with a bit of a dose of salt, because is it new money? Is it existing money? Is it going to be this year? Or is it going to be over 10 years or 15 years or whatever it might be? But I once again, it's asking the construction industry to lead the nation out of recession. And I must admit, being the cynic that I am, I do find that slightly ironic, in that construction, by and large, was expected to soldier on regardless of the coronavirus and the potential threat therein. And yet, once again, that we turn to construction to lead us out of recession.
Yeah, you're dead right. And as you're right, is it 5 billion of new money or 5 billion of old money just regurgitated into some of the projects? I don't know. We want to see a bit of meat on the bone. The other day they did come out with a white paper of saying this is where the infrastructure we're looking for in the next 10 years, I think it was, or 5 or 10 years. I can't remember what it was now. But we actually want the facts. We don't want dreams. We want actual facts. And if we're going to build schools, hopefully it's new schools. It's not going to be regurgitated schemes that are just going to be improved. But that's one sector that is definitely in need of improvement. Another sector is still housing. We're still looking at, I don't know, something like, we're still trying to get 250,000 units a year. And I think what we've got to look into is how local authorities, and I know this has been muted, but I haven't seen anything about it really, about how they will start to be a little bit more compassionate about some of the, I think compassionate is a probable word, but for it, about some of the planning applications that are coming through, because the high street has been totally decimated. The high street will have to look something different. We are all now used to buying online or whatever. So there's going to be quite a few empty properties which could be very quickly turned into housing along the high street. But we've also got to take off the shackles and start to build on brownfield sites to begin with, because we still need housing. We still need to live somewhere. We have, as a population, we are not declining. We are still growing. So if we don't start to build those houses, where are those people going to be? So I think social housing has got to be improved significantly, and investment there, and some of the legalities of what they have to go through at the present moment have to be relaxed, so we can build some more social housing, which in turn can obviously provide good accommodation and for people, and we can therefore refurbish old stock, and demolish it, inappropriate stock that we've got so far. It's not just roads and it's not just railways. We've got to look at the whole aspect, and just to come out with that 5 billion, and is that enough? When we're talking about our table does 4 or 5 billion a month, that's just 1 month extra.
Yeah, I must admit that was one of the things that really stood out for me, because I mean, going back, what was it, August before last, when the HS2 got the initial tranche of contracts hit there, that was just shy of 10 billion. Well, if 10 billion that isn't even HS2 half built, 5 billion this day and age doesn't go very far, does it?
No, it's a huge figure, as you say, and we'd all like it in our back pocket. But really, 5 billion, that's just the start, I think. But I think it was some years ago that what was also said, that for every pound spent in building construction, £1.64 was given back to the economy. So probably they're working on something like that. But 5 billion. But we've also got to get. I'm very, very passionate about NIMBYism, or get rid of it. Let's put that to the history books, because we've got to be able to start putting writing things in, putting property and housing as a number one in a lot of areas to improve.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out. I mean, I guess the 5 billion as a PR exercise that potentially makes the construction industry feel a little bit more warm and fuzzy and positive. Maybe that will be enough to loosen the shackles that you described.
I hope so. I've also, I hope so, because I'm looking here also about, because this is the end of the second quarter of 2020. From compared to the first quarter, this is quite hard hitting information. We're 34% down on the number of projects and 25% down on the value of projects. That is what has happened to the construction sector. So if you average, say it has gone down a third in the last 3 months. That is out there.
That is really stark, isn't it?
Yeah, and only but today we've already seen that. I think it's Robertson's that's saying they're making more people redundant. I think we're very now much used to reading things. These are going to be made redundant. There's going to be cost cuttings here, cost cutting there. But what is it? Travis Perkins are going to lay off 2,500 people across the UK. Now they're suppliers to the construction industry, so that must mean that the construction industry hasn't got the actual value for it, so they've got to make their changes as well. So if you just take that down the actual scale, you're looking at many redundancies. I hope my doom and gloom is just a bit premature, but I'm not seeing it really. You look at I've got a good friend that works in the hospitality sector, and that is devastated, absolutely devastated. So where are you going to? You're not going to be refurbishing bars and restaurants, which was obviously a key thing for the construction industry to work in those places as well.
Yeah, and it's not like we're going to go back all guns blazing either, is it? With
No.
some staggered work times and availability of products and availability of staff and all that goes with it. It's not like somebody can just turn on a light switch and we're back to, all guns blazing. It's going to be a really slow ramp up back to some sense of normality, isn't it?
Yeah, and one thing we cannot, for the people that are listening to this, we cannot go back into a second lockdown. We must maintain what we're being told of. I know it's a bit confusing sometimes, but the social distancing and all of those things. I don't know what's going to happen in Leicester, but you can imagine that happening if you're going to have pockets of that across the UK. It is going to cause no end of issues with the construction industry, because how are people going to move if they work in Leicester if they live in Leicester but work in Northampton or other areas? How's that all going to happen? So we really must listen to what we're being told, and I know we're getting a little bit complacent, but we've really got to make sure that we don't go back into this second lockdown.
And I get the impression that by and large, I think construction has risen to the challenge of social distancing.
Yes.
Some of the stuff that has been put in place, sort of safety systems, software systems, and all this kind of stuff. Are clients buying into that, do you think?
I think they're a little bit. They're protecting their own business, which we are kind of, if we're not careful, going down a road of conflict between client and contractor, because who knew what was going to happen? If you put a bid in January, we already track from, as we often say, we already track from submission of bid to actually the first shovel in the ground before, well, in 2019 was roughly running at about 24-25 weeks. Now you could be submitting a bid in January and you'll be called to a pre-start or post-tender interview now, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, whatever. And how would your bid be actually? Your bid wouldn't include for a lot of the new way of working. And I really hope clients do not start to say, well, you should have included for that. You should have, because nobody, we're working this out as we go along, and that's where we've got to be very careful. There is no manual to COVID-19. It's something totally new. And we're not making it up as we go along, but we kind of are in a way. We're trying to do the best, and everything we do, there is a risk, but don't exploit those risks. Otherwise, we'll be back into a contractual world of one in one corner of the boxing ring and one in the other corner of the boxing ring, and then we will be struggling as an industry because we'll be focusing more on obtaining our money rather than putting a brick on a brick, which is where we make our money.
Absolutely. I mean, I must admit, we spoke just before we came on stream, and I think one of my biggest concerns and one of my biggest disappointments, perhaps naively, I was hoping that the lockdown and pulling together for the NHS and everything else would have reshaped the industry somewhat. We would try and work together and be a bit more collaborative, but it seems that just as we're going back to work, the opposite is true. We seem to have gone back to the bad old days of every man for himself, and let's just look after number one.
Unfortunately, that's all. It's a mixed view out there, but there is elements where we are going back to our the bad old ways, and I was hoping the same as you, that we were going to look at technology, the way we could improve ourselves, and probably take a considered view of what's going to happen, because I think everybody's got their own vested interest, whether it's a client or a contractor, but somewhere through the middle there should be a considered view. The clients have lost money because they aren't getting their project done on time, and when they said they were going to do so, they're more likely, if they're financing it, have got extra finance through the project. And it's the same as the contractor. He's got extra finance. He can't get his materials, but he will be delayed, and he can't get his staff on site. So there should be an appropriate considered view. But at this present moment in time, it's not industry wide, that view. Some people we are hearing anecdotally that there are some issues out there, and that will only just impinge upon us as an industry coming out of the actual recession at the end of the day, because we're going to hit a huge recession.
Yeah, it makes for a stark reading, doesn't it? It really does.
Yeah.
I realise you have other things to do, Neil. I'm not entirely sure what they are, but I'm sure you have. I've been playing the BCLive.co.uk web address across the bottom of the screen the entire time we've been talking.
Thank you very much indeed,
is that the best place for people to go? Because I keep saying it. I think now more than ever people need access to the very latest and true, verified, validated information, which you guys hold. Is that the best place for people to go?
Now, there is also the main site is our Builders Conference site. So that's buildersconference.co.uk, where you can go there. That will tell you how to ask for an online demo. You only have to put in your name, telephone number, or email address. It's under, there's a button on there, just say register, and we'll get back to you within approximately 48 hours, working hours, and we'll give you an online show. That's the best place. Yeah, we're currently still holding about 11,000 projects through the construction industry across the UK, and yeah, it's as you very kindly said, we only put on information that we validated. We don't put on hearsay. We kind of say less is more, because nothing is worse for anybody going to site and find our website and finding something that is, well, possibly going to happen, but we thought we'd put it up there. So we only put up the real stuff, and it's not influenced by commercialism. So we're not, there is no kind of advertising or anything like that. We just put it as it is, and then it's the best way of finding out what's going on.
Absolutely. Well, as I say, I'll put a link in the description for this video. In the meantime, Neil, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your time, and certainly appreciate the information, and fingers crossed for a bit of an upswing next month, although being July, even that, there's a strange thing. We normally look at July and August and think, well, things will be quiet because everyone's on holiday. Is anyone going on a holiday at the moment? I actually don't know the answer to that.
No, exactly right. I am looking hopefully forward to having a good month for the construction industry in July and August, because people will start be getting back to the offices after the lockdown and starting to move. So keep our fingers crossed. June is our July, in normal July. So maybe we come a bit early. Hopefully that's the way we're going to look at it. Let's put some positiveness on it.
Well, in that case, I'll see you in about 30 days, and we'll find out how that's all fallen.
I look forward to that. Okay.
Cheers, Neil. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Well, a bit of a mixed bag there. Some well, obviously bad news. You know, the industry is lagging behind, but potentially some good news if Boris Johnson and his team are good to their word and infrastructure does get a bit of a kickstart, and hopefully that will be enough to restore some positivity. Have a whole new series of live shows coming up in the very near future. We did get a bit caught up with our Hillhead Almost Live, but we were originally intending for that to be about half an hour long, and it came out an hour and a half. So I'm sure you can imagine just the amount of logistics that went into putting that together. But there is another one that's coming up that I really want to draw your attention to. And that show is going to be called Demolition Technology Live, and it will largely mirror the style of that Hillhead Almost Live that took place this time last week. As the name suggests, this show will focus on emerging technologies that are helping to shape the future of the demolition sector. So it's likely to include things like remote controls and automation, simulators, together with telematics and remote monitoring, and much more besides. So keep watching demolitionnews.com for more details of Demolition Technology Live. Keep watching our Facebook page for details of our next live shows. In the meantime, thanks for joining us. As I always say about this time, look after yourself, look after your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Stay safe, stay positive, and I will see you again very, very soon. Thanks very much for joining us.